character of the Old Testament. For example, Jesus personally confirmed. This is Jesus, guys. This is Jesus, class, personally confirming when he spoke about the Old Testament. Jesus himself said Adam and Eve were created by God in Matthew 19:4. He said Abel was killed by Cain in Matthew 23:35. He said a flood covered the land and destroyed the people in Noah's day in Luke 17:27. Jesus said God spoke to Moses through a burning bush in Luke 20, verse 37. He said Elijah performed miracles in Luke 4:25. He said Jonah was in the fish's belly 3 days in Matthew 12:40. He said Daniel made true predictions in Matthew 24, verse 15. Now, class, this brings us to make the decision that either it's true that the Old Testament is the Word of God, or we cannot believe the word of Jesus Christ. In short, if Jesus taught the truth, then the Old Testament is the historically accurate and divinely authoritative Word of God. That's the bottom line. When we decide whether we're going to believe the Old Testament or not, we are really saying whether we believe Jesus Christ or not. Because Jesus Christ himself said the Old Testament is accurate. Jesus Christ himself said the Old Testament is the Word of God. So if we're not going to believe the Word of God in the Old Testament, we're really not believing Jesus Christ. That's really what it comes down to. So the question is, are we going to believe Jesus Christ or not? That's where we need to come back to. So that's the first thing. And the second thing. The third thing we need to look at is that Christ and the canonization of the Old Testament. We already discussed that Jesus is not only the key to the divine nature of the Old Testament, but he's also the key to the extent of the Old Testament. This specifically deals with the question of which books belong in it. And this issue is called the canonization of the Bible. If you've ever heard anybody talk about canonization, what they're talking about is deciding which books belong in the Bible and which books don't belong in the Bible. That's an issue of canonization. It's a big word, but it's not really that difficult, because all it means is which books belong in the Bible and which books don't belong in the Bible. And the word canon means rule or norm and refers to the sacred writings which are the rule or norm for faith and practice among believers. More specifically, the canon is concerned with the extent of the inspired or normative writings of the Old Testament. And dispute arose over the claim by the Roman Catholic Church at the Council of Trent in 1546 that 11 books that Protestants excluded are to be included in the Bible. And these books are called the Apocrypha. If you've ever heard anybody talk about the Apocrypha, what they're talking about is those 11 books that the writers decided were not canonized. They were not part of our Old Testament. But yet this council at Trent, the Catholic Church said, yes, they are. And if you read a Catholic Bible, you'll find them in a Catholic Bible. So we need to talk a little bit about the concept of the Apocrypha. Specifically, these are the books of Tobit, Judith, the additions to Esther, Wisdom, Ecclesiasticus, Baruch, the letter of Jeremiah, the prayer of Azariah, Susanna, Bel and the dragon, and 1st and 2nd Maccabees. I guarantee that somewhere along the line, someone is going to come up and ask you about the Apocrypha, because they've asked me before.